Hello, 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 world. Welcome to the Expats Roundtable, where like-minded expats located in different parts of the world share expat experiences and tips and things related to, hey, what does it mean to live as an expat and how that affects all and every one of us. And without further ado, let's go directly to our participants. How you doing, Inez? How you doing?
Good, James. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Where are you coming to us from?
I am in Zurich this morning. I'm originally from America. I've been an expat for about 13 years now, living in England. Spent some time in England. Spent the last 8 years in the UAE, and the past 10 months living here in Zurich.
Cool, cool, cool. What part of New York?
I'm from upstate New York.
Oh,
So
upstate.
yeah, upstate.
Where
Yeah,
upstate? I'm from New York City.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's right. I'm from a small town. Let's see, it's about an hour outside of Syracuse, called New Berlin.
Oh,
It's probably, most people know, like I usually tell people it's near Cooperstown because most people know Cooperstown.
oh, okay. I went to
Or
school in Cortland.
Syracuse. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you for joining us. It's about 10:04 there in Zurich. So thanks a
Yes.
lot for joining us. Okay. Now our next participant is John. John, where are you coming to us from? How you doing?
Kia ora, tēnā koe, as we say here in New Zealand. I'm coming to you from the South Kaipara, the beautiful rural part of New Zealand, north of Auckland.
Well, how long have you been there?
We moved out September '05, so we've been here 12 years and loving every second of it.
Yeah. Do you love the torrential rains you get out there?
Oh, well, this is a land known for its greenery and its rainforests, so we can't complain. And because we live rural, we catch all the water that hits our roof, and that's our water supply. So we're always great. But yeah, no, it's beautiful. We live rurally, but I work all over. So yeah, we're blessed. We've got a really good life balance here, and I moved with my wife and 4 daughters. So we came here the hard way on visitors visas 12 years ago. So 6 human beings, 22 bags, and a 6 months visa. And we managed to turn that into permanent residence and then citizenship. So yeah, we're loving it.
Yeah, the land of the green. That's beautiful out there. Yeah, you talk a little bit more about that later. And we have Paul. Paul is my southern neighbor. How you doing, Paul? Where are you from?
Pretty good, James. I'm talking to you today from Taichung, Taiwan, in the wet central part of the island.
Wow. And where's home? Where's home originally from, I should say?
Home is where the heart is, James.
That's true.
Most lately, I came from South Carolina in the United States. That's where I spent the longest time.
And how long have you been?
I've been in Taiwan for about near on to 18 years.
Wow. I really like that voice. You have that really down to, Barry White, nighttime, listen to my channel voice.
Why, thank you very much.
Boy, how you do? Well, you look comfortable over there. But look, how's the rain down there? Because up here in the north, in northern Taipei, we get tons of rain. Places are just flooding. How's it down there?
We're not swimming down here yet. It seems to be, it's slacked off a little bit here this afternoon. It looks pretty gray outside, though. We got some more weather in the future.
Okay, as long as we don't get any earthquakes out here, we're okay, right?
Sure, knock on wood.
Yeah, and as everybody coming to you from Taipei, Taiwan, northern Taipei, really wet here. And my home is originally from New York City, South Bronx, Fort Apache, actually right across the street from Yankee Stadium. That's right. I'm not a Yankee fan, I'm sorry. But look, welcome everyone to the show, and let's grow this thing here. Guys, let's talk a little bit about, how we became expats. There's all kinds of different stories, some romantic, some boring, some just so, I don't know, nonchalant. But, let's pass the question over to Inez over there. Ladies first, right?
Oh, okay. Well, thank you very much. So basically, I became an expat. My husband is British, and we actually met overseas. We were both in the military. And, you know, after we met, I just, you know, he was like, would you ever move to England? So I was like, yeah, why not? So that's what I did. And at that time, you know, like when I look back on that time, it wasn't, you know, that was before kids, you know, before, well, obviously before kids for us. I didn't really know much about expat life. You know, for me, it was just about, oh, I'm moving to England. And I expected it to be quite, just quite similar. And then when I moved there, there was a lot of differences that I had to deal with, that I didn't expect. So yeah, so that's how, and you know, and then from there we got married and we lived in England for a few years, and then we decided an opportunity came up to move to the UAE. So we took that opportunity. And like I said, we spent the 8 years there. We had our kids there. So they are our little Ameri-Brits that were born in the UAE. And then, you know, once we got done with that, you know, my husband, you know, he really wanted to move on and try, you know, explore somewhere else. And, you know, so we decided to come try out life in Switzerland.
What kind of, you mentioned things, things you didn't expect. What kind of things are that?
You know, it's funny because you move to, like for me being American, and, you know, my traveling wasn't, you know, extensive. It was just through the military. So, you know, I had, you know, done some overseas deployments, you know, and been exposed to other cultures. But when you go on your own as a civilian, and plus I was moving to an English speaking country. So what's different? There was lots of things different. The way people talk to each other, the way social situations, you know, like for me, one big social situation, which I remember, you know, back in the early days, was something as simple as saying goodbye. So like for me, you know, if you're at a party or a barbecue or, you know, somewhere you're just hanging out with friends, you know, it's time to go. You're like, okay, take care, bye-bye, you know, and you go. Well, I found in England, it was always like, you got to go, like my husband would always like to go and let's go say goodbye to this person. Let me go say goodbye to this person. Let me go say goodbye to this person. So saying goodbye wasn't just simply picking up and saying, all right, we got to go, you know, adios. It was a process, you know, and would take anywhere from 10 minutes to 30 minutes. So that's just one little thing, you know, there's tons of different things. Like another issue I had was, you know, looking for work. You know, in the US we have resumes. In England they have CVs, and they're whilst they're similar, they are quite different. So I had a lot of difficulty translating my skills into a CV. You know, so when I first got there, I was doing really like call center jobs. You know, calling people for, you know, to return their batteries to whatever company. You know, I just wasn't. I really struggled with things. You know, those are just two things. I could probably go on and on, but but yeah, I won't. But yeah, so something like that. You know, there was just things I didn't expect.
Well, there's always something that, you know, we won't expect. That's what makes life more. How would you say? We appreciate life more. I guess see it in a different way. But yeah, thanks a lot. You know. We all go through that, and I think we can help other people who are thinking about exploring life overseas.
You know, and but also it was just like, you know, having it be my first experience actually living and residing in a new country, where things are done differently, you know. And I think I kind of went a bit naive when I moved over there, like everything would be what I'm familiar with, and it wasn't. But that's okay, you know, you learn, you go through it, and you just come out and you're just like, okay, I get it now, you know. So
that's right.
So that's the good.
That's punch right along. How about you? Yeah. How about you, John? What's your story?
As I say, father of 4 daughters. We lived in a tiny apartment in central London. I had a good job. And funnily enough, we ended up facing the same sort of situation that many people who live in Auckland, which is has well over a quarter of New Zealand's population live in this region. It was just that bus housing was incredible. And I would end up having to move us some 100-mile away from London and commute in by train or by car, and it just seemed unattainable. So we did a lot of looking around. We looked at some various countries, narrowed it down to New Zealand pretty swiftly. And in the end, as I say, 2005, I did a quick trip down here. Neither of us had been here before, but we'd met a good few Kiwis, and we hadn't many we didn't like. So we thought, well, if the rest of the country's like that, we'd come down here and have a look. So I came on my own, did 3 weeks recce, spoke to 57 recruiters in 3 weeks, and just drove from one end of the country to another. And basically everybody said, you've got to be here to get a job. Nobody's going to take you seriously until you do that. Yeah. So went home, talked to the Wendy and the family, and we just decided to commit to that. We looked at it, and ironically, my employer at the time worked for a global telecoms company, and they decided they were going to do a restructure. So actually, it gave me an opportunity to exit as part of a redundancy situation. And we came here, as I say, September 2005. Mum and dad, 4 girls, 22 bags, and 6 months to find a job that would secure a visa that give us residency. So that's the short version, certainly.
Yeah, was there like a pet in there someplace, a dog, anything like that?
Oh yeah. Okay, you've got the advantage because we've had these conversations before. But in fact, the last email that I looked at on my MacBook before we closed up and headed to the airport in the UK was from an animal sanctuary in New Zealand to say that all the cats, we exported 4 cats ahead of us, so they came and they just arrived safely, if a little drugged up in New Zealand. So that was the last the last email we got before we left. But and I mean, as I say, it's a massive change, and as Inez says, there's I think is a common theme I speak to people. Expect if you move to a country that speaks the same language, you tend to feel that maybe it's not going to be such a big culture shock. But we found the opposite. It was the subtlety of the differences that was quite striking, and whether it be language. I mean, here they drive like they do in the UK. The road signage looks like it's from the US. There's all those little things build up and compound until you actually do feel you're in a very different country. And I think that again, we've had conversations about this, and maybe we'll touch on that in future shows, but some of the things we see here are reasons people leave one country and move to another. And we found a lot of people who just wanted New Zealand to be England in the sun, or Wales or Scotland in the sun, and that's really not what we were after. We were after a very different experience, and to become citizens of a new country without rejecting anything, so we found it to be the same. It's been hard at times, really hard. We've had bereavements and lost friends, and it's been tough. But as I say, to offer a great opportunity to our daughters who travel widely now and have a great education here, we're really blessed, and we're so glad we made the jump. It was great.
Cool. Wow. Well, you're writing a book too, so when the book comes out, we're going to promote it here, okay? Okay.
Yeah, sure. I'll have a white beard by then, I think.
No, as long as you get it done, that's all. Hey, okay, Paul, how about you? Tell us a little bit of your story now.
Well, I've been here, like I said, for 18 years. Before I came to Taiwan, I was an English teacher in Indianapolis, Indiana. I fell into that job, and after 2 years, I was kind of looking for something else to do. And then out of nowhere, on September 21st, 1999, there was a massive earthquake in central Taiwan. Well, let's see. As soon as that happened, this was the early days of the internet, and I was teaching a computer lab class with a few Taiwanese students in attendance, and the red banner went up on CNN.com that said that there was a 7-point whatever earthquake in Taiwan. And so I notified all of the Taiwanese students in the school, and I had them try to contact their parents to make sure that everybody was okay. A couple weeks later, a notice went up on the board in the teacher's room that said, hey, our schools in central Taiwan have lost a lot of teachers, and nobody was killed, but people's parents were certainly concerned and had asked them to come back in a hurry, leaving the schools in a bit of a lurch. So our sister school in Taiwan had asked anybody in America who was interested in teaching to Taiwan to come on over. They would pay for plane fare, they'd help find a place to live, and offer an amazing opportunity.
Wow.
So at the time I came for a 2-year contract, and I was planning to go back and do gosh knows what. But after 2 years, man, I just kind of got stuck in a good way. I got a promotion at work and I got engaged, and how do you give that up? So the engagement turned into a lovely marriage. The lovely marriage, attracted a dog and eventually produced 2 beautiful children. And I'm still here. It's been 18 years and I'm still teaching English, and most of the time loving it.
Yeah, keep that positive perspective. Yeah, I remember that earthquake was a 7.5 earthquake, the 921 earthquake, and lost over 3,000 people. And at that time, we put together a small. I used to drive this big, huge Jeep, and I was a member of a four-wheeling club, and we got how would you say, recruited by the government to send nurses and things down to the south, and that was the first time I've driven over 100 and something kilometers an hour, just ripping down the highway with all the security stuff, and then we had to do search and recovery. That was something else, and that was the time when you see people from all over the world, just landing in Taiwan with their equipment and dogs and search dogs and all that. And it shows that when people get their things together, they can actually forget all these obstacles in the way and get things done. That's just what humans need. Guys, we've been living overseas for a while, and I wouldn't consider any of us newbies, but how do you think people back home, or what issues do you have explaining to people back home? And we got Facebook, we got Skype, we got all this stuff. What kind of issues do you have explaining to people things about your overseas living to friends and family back home? Because, they probably think we're weird. Inez?
Well, no, you're right. With, it's great having the Facebook or, any kind of social media, because for that, like all of our experiences, we can just share with our families. But yeah, like especially when I was living in Abu Dhabi, and when I first initially moved there, because it wasn't really something you heard about in the news. People weren't really, didn't really understand where it was. So having to explain to them. But I think what happened, like, for example, my mom had a very different opinion, when she actually came to visit, because it's very modernized. And, I remember we were sitting in in the mall in the food court and just being like, is this what you expected here? And she was just like, no, she was expecting it to be like just desert and tents and, and it was very modern. So yeah, I think now, as opposed to even like 5 years ago or 10 years ago, it's a lot easier because we have social media. We can send videos, we can show our friends and family, what we're doing, where, the culture that we're participating in. So it's a lot easier now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you're out in the desert, sometimes do you get questions like, do you ride camels to work or what?
Yeah. Well, everyone would always they always tell you to be careful, and I think anywhere you live as an American expat, you can't get complacent. You always have to just kind of have an awareness. And that just goes with living abroad. I don't find so much now. Well, I think we all have to be just have an awareness. It doesn't matter where you're from. But especially a couple of years ago, I was always very aware.
Do you think that's because of your military background?
I was just thinking that. I think that's also because, when you're in the military, they do teach you that, especially if you have to go somewhere, you just kind of have an alertness of what's going on around you. you know, even, but like, you know, even if you're not in uniform, you know, you just still have that sort of awareness. So.
Yeah, I have the same thing. You know, I have a military background too, and also being in law enforcement. I guess that's built into your DNA somehow. You know. But look at you know, John. He's so laid back and cool. You know, look, you know, he doesn't panic. He maintains that demeanor. How about you, John?
Oh, it's funny you say that. I've discussed with James before. Just 8 weeks before we left to come to New Zealand, the July 2005 bombs, the ISIS bombs in London, occurred. And again, just this morning, I was discussing with Inez before we went live, just spending a couple of hours just trying to track down one of our family who's back in London teaching out there. In the aftermath of last night's attacks in London. I think it's you know, I don't know about a cool demeanor, but I grew up through the 1960s and 70s, which was the heyday of the troubles that came from Northern Ireland and from the sectarian violence there. So I know both my wife and I have been around 7 of the bombs in London. If you work in central London, many people have exactly the same story. And I think one of the things that we found was, you know, a lot of people said, "Oh, did you emigrate, you know, to get away from the bombs?" And I said, "Well, you know, I don't believe that that's possible wherever you are, whether you served in the military, whether you've served in the police force." I wrote a piece on a blog many years ago that got picked up by The Guardian, and I just said, look, you know, when I wake up tomorrow morning, my wife expects me to be her husband, my children expect me to be their father, my colleagues expect me to be the guy who comes in and buys them a coffee or makes them laugh in the office. And I think most of us are privileged enough to live in a country or a society where it is still a rarity to face such things. And yet, just this evening, you know, 4 items down the news after the London terror attacks of yesterday, they're talking about bombings in Afghanistan and events in Syria. And it does make me wonder just how much it takes for us to understand that what is shocking and unusual for us is actually daily fare for others. Right. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think when we move around in this hazard, you know, we move around, you can be a smart civilian or you can have somebody who draws on a long experience in the military. All of us need to be aware of what we hold dear and what we cherish. And you know, I'm a Londoner. I look at unattended bags in Auckland, and I'm kind of looking around to see who's checking this out, who's involved. And Kiwis will just go up and say, "Oh, just open the bag. There'll be nothing in there." So it's and which is a great thing, really, because it means that people are not habituated to, as they may be in Boston, as they may be elsewhere. So there's still some places where it's a rarity, but it's interesting talking of expats. A good number of people, there has been a lot of immigration of British police officers into the New Zealand police force. Some of the guys I work with in civil defence, they come from an intelligence and an operational background in the various uniform services in the UK, and there's a lot of people who come here basically the requests of organisations who are saying, hey, this is now truly a global issue. It doesn't matter if you live, we're the next door neighbours to Antarctica, but people still come.
Right. But, you know, it is the fact of, but, you know, there's something, no matter where you are, there are certain issues that you do have to pay attention to. That's, I think a lot of it is cultural, a lot of it is economic, and there's, you know, how would you say, phobotyping and things like that. But hopefully things will get through better communication and intermingling. People understand that basically we are the same, but uniquely different. How about you, Paul?
Well, when we talk about what do people back home think of me, am I a weirdo? I was a bit of a weirdo before I came over, so there hasn't been too much of a change there.
Makes it easy.
And, you know, social media has exploded since I came here, so that's made it a lot easier to be an expat. I think the conception that people back home used to have of where has Paul gone. I've had to correct so many people and tell them that I'm not in Thailand. I'm actually in a different place called Taiwan. And it's, oh, really? Where is that? And is that the big China or is that the little China? Well, it's Taiwan actually. And back to John's point about disasters and terrible things happening. I can remember when the tsunami hit Japan a few years ago and had all of the dominoes of disasters were going on there. I got lots of messages from back home from people wondering if I was okay, if the tsunami was going to hit me here in Taichung. Like, it's a pretty big world. That's not going to affect me directly. So I think that my being here, I'm still kind of abstract to a lot of people back home. I think that Americans maybe, I don't want to say that they have a narrow worldview, but perhaps they don't quite understand how large the world is and how many different countries there really are out here. So that's expanded my mind quite a bit. And to speak again to John's ideas of personal security while living abroad. I've never found a place on this island where I've felt nervous walking down the street. It's incredible. There's just, I have such freedom of movement here. It's truly an island paradise. Safety and universal health care.
Yes.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. So, yeah, I think that things are good. Things are good here.
You mentioned something very interesting, universal health care, and it's a big issue back in the States. And I'm gonna push John to the side a little bit, but there are some things that, admittedly, sometimes we have to think and say, back home we don't always do things better than everyone else. I'm not only aiming this question particularly on the U.S., our home nation, but there are some things that people can learn from each other, and this, universal health care and things like that. Are there anything, and your guys don't have to, I'm going in a certain order, but if you have any questions, please feel free to cross-examine each other. But are there things that you found out in your host nation that you wish were implemented, frankly, implemented back in your home nation? Anybody?
I've got an interesting comparison here. England has a unique accident compensation commission, and basically what we do is through.
Okay, John, repeat that. We lost a little bit of the signal there. Go back one more time.
New Zealand has a mechanism called ACC, which is the Accident Compensation Commission, and it's a government body that is financed through a levy on our it's a levy on as part of our tax. And basically this means that any ongoing care after any accident, so should I slip in the garden hanging the washing out, should I be severely injured, God forbid, in a car smash, should I have an accident at the workplace, I'm fully covered. So that leads to a non-necessity or a lack of necessity for somebody to sue for damages. I'm going to be looked after specifically around my healthcare. So if somebody has a back, if they slip on a garden path and they put their back out, it reduces the cost of the health care with the primary healthcare. We have a universal healthcare system here, although you can imagine we only have 4.5-5 million people, so we don't have a big fund put aside for that. But there's good basic healthcare. There is private healthcare as well. But what this fund means is that I can get a taxi to and from work. It will basically pay for everything I need to get fit, healthy, and back to full fitness. And secondly, to restore me into the workplace. So maybe I need a standing desk now, whatever. So it'll really help for that. And that's a really unusual mechanism. But what we find is there's actually no litigation over accidents. It's taken care of. So you may have a criminal conviction for causing an accident, but you won't have a civil action to sue for damages because it's covered. So you don't get punitive damages, but you do get, in some cases, sadly, lifelong care that will look after that. I mean, it's a very brief and condensed view of it, and there are some exceptions or whatever. But I've never heard of another country having a similar mechanism which removes the need for long, drawn out and vexatious litigation.
Wow.
In the U.S., everybody's afraid to get sued. Yeah, go ahead.
Right.
I've always been happy in all the countries that I've lived in with receiving healthcare. I can remember the first time going to the hospital. I had allergic reaction when I was living in the UK, and going to the hospital and being treated. And when I left, I remember being like, okay, so what paperwork do I need to fill out? What do I need to sign? They were like, no, you're finished. You're good. You're good. They treated me they sent me on my way, which was really, it just felt, I remember feeling really weird. Like, that's it? What? Like, what is this all about? And when we moved to the UAE, you get healthcare, like health insurance. I found that this, the medical treatment that I received was always, I never doubted it. It was really good service. And even now in Switzerland, we've already been with the kids to the hospital like twice. But the service that we receive is just really excellent. I never feel, even with the language barrier, I've never felt that I didn't know what was going on. Which is very important, especially when you have, like recently, my son had to get stitches and required an ambulance visit. I was called to the school, and I remember feeling like, oh my God, where do I send him? I don't even know what the local doctor is. But once I got to the school, the ambulance arrived. There was someone who spoke English, which made it better for me and for my son. And, they took him to the children's hospital here, which I already knew where that was, so I felt better. But yeah, it was very, I find that the service that we've received living abroad has been exceptional. And I've never really had to worry about, like, is my insurance going to cover this? Do I have to pay extra? There's never been that kind of feeling where when I was in the US, when it was just me, trying to find a provider, a doctor that took my health insurance was always a pain in the butt. You just have to call around and say, like, do you take this insurance? No, we don't. Call somebody else, which made it really difficult. I can't imagine having to do that with a family.
Wow. That's, my whole point of bringing up this question is because there are things that we can learn from each other, whether it's at a personal level, technology level, but this is something that we can share and learn. When I interviewed John a couple of months ago, he mentioned something about when he landed in New Zealand, how they said, okay, first, let's get the kids in school. Do you remember that story, John? You told me about that?
Yeah.
Can you talk briefly about that?
Sure. I mean, as I say, so we landed here, and we essentially had a 6 months visitor's visa. So we're no different. We came through immigration. We were fully open about that, said, look, we intend to stay as long as we get a job with a visa. And they were cool. We lived down country in a beautiful part of the country called Whenua, and it's right on the beach. It's very, very old school. It's kind of like the 1950s in the little townships and stuff. And we had I've lost my train of thought. What were you asking me, James?
Yeah, you living in Down Island, and you get the kids there, and
that's right. Yeah.
I don't know.
So
I'm gonna have to go down there and kind of get you back on track there.
Oh yeah. It's not even that late. I can't claim tiredness. No, I remember. So we moved to this village. The one man police force came and checked us out and asked us what we were doing, because it was very unusual to have foreigners living in the village.
Wow.
And then we thought, well, you know, we're here, but we should we maybe need to investigate whether we can get the kids into school and what it's going to take. And like Ines says, you know, you have this whole thing of like, oh my God, the bureaucracy is going to be a nightmare. Is it going to be like the UK, where if you're a visitor, you can't get your kids in school, so on and so forth? So we rocked up with our eldest daughter to the college, and to the three or the two younger ones, I should say, because our youngest wasn't old enough for school. And basically the school said, hey, listen, you know, kids should be in school. We'll worry about the paperwork later. Let's get your kid into school and do this. And we were just blown away. And they said, look, you know, New Zealand's a country, and as far as Europeans go, it's a very young country, just 150, 60 years of European settlement here. She said, you know, we're used to people coming up, and New Zealand has quite a mobile workforce. You know, people move for seasonal work and whatever, so they're used to bending the rules. And it was just great. You know, you've got a head teacher who in the UK might be giving you 20 forms to fill out and whatever. Just send your kids along, don't worry about the uniform because it's too close to the end of school year, we'll just work it out. And we lived there for 3 months. The school kids went to school for 3 months, and then I got a job with a visa and we moved up country. And we were just stunned, and everybody was just so kind. It was tough. I mean, the local area, they'd had a big layoffs at a local factory, and there was a bit of resentment from some families who saw us as representatives of people coming in and taking jobs. But I've seen that in the UK, so I don't see that as anything different. But yeah, we were blown away by the generosity, and just the civic mindedness, as I say. It's kind of, I don't want to paint it as it's a wonderful life, but there's the real kind of can-do attitude here, which is just, it's very refreshing when you come from a big city.
Yeah, I mean, it is important as an expat that you contribute to your the host nation.
Sure.
And Paul, you know, I'm sure you know you when you mentioned healthcare, I just had to talk about that. But I want to start a particular point out with you. And that is, you know, raising children abroad as an expat. You know, what kind of issues that you come across with that?
Well, okay,
that's unique to an expat point of view, because you know there's some craziness you have to deal with sometimes.
Well, to begin with, you have to have the children in the first place.
Oh,
now,
okay.
As far as I understand, I've never had children in any other country, but the basic mechanics of producing a baby, they work pretty much the same here as they would anywhere else. But in Taiwan, they do something for new mothers that they don't do in America, and I'd be interested to learn if they do this in other places. Is they have something called Zoyedza, which is postnatal care. My wife had a baby, two of them actually, but the first one, she had the baby and stayed in the OBGYN clinic for 2 or 3 days. And after that, she moved to this postnatal care center, and she stayed there for a month. And during that month, she received classes in taking care of the baby, and she was the kids had round-the-clock nursing care. She was fed, oh my God, I think she had about 7 healthy meals given to her a day. They just fed her and fed her and fed her.
Sounds like a bodybuilder.
Yeah. If she wanted to spend lots of time with the baby, that was fine. They would put a cart in the bedroom. If she needed a break, they'd take the baby away. It was really, really cool. If America could have that sort of thing, I think that would be fantastic. Now, once the kids have grown up and gone to school, yeah, things are really different here. In Taiwan, we have something called the cram school.
Yes.
And kids go to school from 8 o'clock in the morning until, 4:50 in the afternoon. And that's their regular school. Now, then they have free time. What do you do with the free time? let's have some more school. So they cram as much information into the kids' heads as possible. There are kids who are in first and second grade who will go to school from 8 o'clock in the morning until almost 10 o'clock at night.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
And they're studying math that's 2 or 3 years ahead of where they are in their regular school. I'm not necessarily saying that this is a good thing. It's a different way of life, and it's the catalyst for some strife, I think, in relationships between expats and I wanted to say between expats and foreigners, but that's not quite right. Expats and Taiwanese people. I'd like my kids to have a lot more freedom of movement, of choice in what they're doing. And slowly but surely, my oldest is getting ready to go to junior high school this year. He's getting a little bit more of that freedom, so I'm happy for that.
Yeah, that does spur a little stunting of the creativity in certain kids, right?
Yeah.
I just have a question for Paul in regards to that. When you are, when your children are going to school for so long, what is the attitude amongst the parents? Like I can I'm imagining it to be like there's more social pressure for your child to do well in school, and that's what their whole life is focusing on.
The focus is on the test. There's always a test coming up, and with tests come rankings, and with ranking comes face. So the higher you score on the test, the better you look. So I think that parents want to be able to brag on their kids and say, my kid is the top in his class at, Harvard kindergarten here in town or something like that. Our kids haven't had the full-on experience of 15 hours in after school schooling.
Right.
But there have been days when they've been up past midnight working on homework.
Right.
They've had homework every single day since kindergarten, and they've had 4 years of kindergarten. 4 years of kindergarten. Can you believe it?
Yeah.
That's intense.
Yeah.
And this is systemic in Taiwan, mainland China, Korea, and Japan. That locked in school thing and rote memorization. And it can be tough.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. We have a large Korean community here, and I've got a good few friends amongst them. And again, it's the same focus here. One of the international education is also a big business in Auckland, particularly, and we've had young women staying with us as young as 12 who've been sent off for 3 months education. Incredible. And these are in terms of age are really quite immature. That it's a very early age to be away from mum and dad for up to kind of 12 weeks. And we've seen that. And interestingly, I saw, I believe one of the Scandinavian countries is either considering or has just done away with homework altogether.
Oh,
based on based on some fairly, as I understand it, based on some fairly solid figures and studies. So it's interesting, as you say, the cultural norms that you see. I mean, certainly I look at middle two daughters who have one has completed university and a postgrad, and the other's going through university. They're studying really hard, and they have a good work ethic, but certainly didn't go through a process anything like that in Taipei or Taiwan or Korea. It's interesting. How's the schooling in Switzerland, Inez?
Yeah, it is quite different than what I was coming from, because my son was already going to school in the UAE. We sent him to an international school, there, where he had a kind of a regular day, like, 8 to 2:45, learning about all the subjects. They got homework. It was kind of like that optional homework that they could do because he was only in kindergarten. But yeah, coming to Switzerland, it's quite different. So kids go to school. They start school around 4. They start with kindergarten and they go through 2 years of kindergarten. School is only from about 8:30 till 12. And then they come home for lunch. My son is in first grade now. He's in first grade. So he only goes back for the afternoon for 2 days a week. So he'll go back to school from 1:30 to about 3:30 on a Monday and a Tuesday. And then the rest of the week, they're at home. They're really just encourage children learning through communication, so they really want the children to learn how to communicate with each other. I'm told that when they get into about second, they do like academics, the alphabet, they are learning reading, but they don't really focus on academics until about 3rd grade. And that's all I really know right now, because I've got my son in first grade. I've got a daughter in kindergarten. And for us, we put him in the local school here. So for us, we were focusing on them just learning the language. So here in schools, they speak German. In kindergarten, they speak Swiss German. And once they get to elementary school, they speak standard German.
Is this
There's a little bit
German, lower German, all that stuff?
Yeah, it can also be called High German.
High
yes.
German, right.
There are some variations. But I think as parents, we just felt like, okay, we're not going to focus on, we will feel happy if they can communicate in German by the end of the year, and then we'll take it from there, So that's really for us is the main goal of this school year. Of course, my son does get homework, but it's really simple homework. It takes like 5 minutes to do. I think it's just kind of to get in the habit of doing homework. Yeah, and we've been happy with this system so far. I do find, because I don't speak German yet, there can be a language barrier, but we haven't had any serious issues where we felt like worried as parents. We've met with the teachers. We keep progress on our kids and how they're adjusting. But yeah, and for us, we're just going to wait and see how it turns out. We're happy so far. The kids are speaking German. So it's pretty good.
Well,
but different. For me, it was a big adjustment. What? They come home for lunch. I've got to cook. And then when they were like, Alex is not going back to school. What? Are you kidding me? So it was a big adjustment for me, as well as for the kids having to go to school. So.
Well, in a later episode, I want to tune in on the education as far as how education in certain nations can, how would you say, enhance or maybe in some cases retard an expat child integration into the nation, or even learning about their home nation. But, because of time, I'm going to try to keep us under the hour. But I have a question, and this I would like you guys to think about home for a second, because there's a lot of things that happens back home. People get married, that life thing, your classmates, they end up with, kids, and your other friend has a new car and a new house and all that stuff. When you do go back, how do you guys, how would you say, do you ever feel like you have missed out on anything back home in any particular way? And let's go with John on this one.
I thought I was going to get some time to think about this one.
No, I'm not going to give you any time. No, we don't have that time.
5, 4, 3.
Okay, thanks, Paul. I'm going to be really honest with you. This house on a small holding, it's like a homestead in the middle of rural New Zealand. This is home. We came here. I want to be really careful for those watching. I want to be really careful and explain this. When we came to this property, it just suddenly everything clicked and we felt like we were home. This is where we were meant to be. there's that kind of thing of people say, oh, you know, why do you hate the UK? And it's like, oh, hang on, no, I don't hate the UK. I had 4 beautiful daughters. I wanted them to have a better experience than I'd had. That's not disrespecting my parents or my homeland or anything else. This is around helping them, equip them to be citizens of the world, to understand, to have more opportunities. And, you know, there's a bit of a joke when people go to Heathrow, you hear the people, they can't wait to leave. They tell you everything that's bad about England or America or wherever. And then they land up here and they end up building this kind of community of English people or American people. And they recreate, you know, the best and the worst of their homeland in an enclave in a new country. I think for me, home is New Zealand. I'm proud to have dual citizenship, and I recognize there's a privilege to that, and many have to give up the citizenship of the nation of their birth in order to move to other places or to become a citizen elsewhere. But I'm proud that and feel blessed that our girls have the opportunity to have 2 passports, to be able to travel widely. Our girls have been to many of the Pacific Islands on mission trips and stuff to work. I mean, we teach our kids about kind of servant leadership, and we have one daughter in July. She's going to Vanuatu to work in primary schools to help them there. The daughter who's in England has been off. They've got opportunities they would never have had in Europe. Well, they would have had different ones, so that would be saying. But I went back to the UK last year. I was really shocked. CCTV everywhere. The traffic was so slow in London. And yet I miss English beer and English cheese and a few other things. But it's the real home, you know, the homely things. But I think we live in as we've discussed, the technology and the fact, look at this technology. I can look at these wonderful people around the world. We live in a very big village now. So maybe it's going to be a few generations beyond us before we really get to understand that Paul and Inez and James are my next door neighbours. And one day we'll shake hands for real. But until then, you know, we won't. I have a friend who I met on AOL Instant Messenger. I think the first year it was available, and we still speak weekly to this day. And I consider him a very close friend. I share stuff with him. I don't share with people who live next door. I've always liked the fact that I live in this massive village. So that's a long answer.
Wow. It's very interesting when you know, I had a friend about maybe over 15 years ago when the internet would start getting warm. There used to be a tool called CUC Me. And back then I was doing a lot of video editing, and I met a friend online, and you know, he gave me, my background is media production, but he gave me some hints on how to record certain like court proceedings and things like that. And now I'm going to mention this because even though sometimes in this virtual world we're living in, I mean, you know, we got Inez out in Zurich and Paul south of me and John out in New Zealand. It's very amazing how you can build up these relationships. Well, over a couple of, you know, after some time, I get a mail that said, you know, he's ill. So I had his phone number, and I never met the guy, and I called, and, you know, turned out he passed away. But it was strange how I felt a loss for someone who I've never met in the real world, you know. And it just shows that, you know, 4 C's, 1 family, as I always say. It's really very interesting, but I didn't mean to bring everybody on the down note. But,
no.
It's just processes that I hope, you know, people can learn to develop. So Paul, back to you. I mean, you know, what's your case, you know, like what do you miss from back home? Or do you feel you missed out on anything, you know, people getting married, you know, all these things like that?
Well, it would have been nice to have been in Chicago last year to see the Cubs finally win the World Series.
That's right.
I certainly miss the best pizza in the world, Chicago-style pizza.
Okay, that's debatable.
So that, you know, there's food that I miss. When I go home, what do I feel like I've missed out on? It comes from conversations with friends when most of what they talk about is television programs and reality TV. I have no idea what they're talking about. I'm not sure who the Kardashians are or why I need to keep up with them. So there are certain aspects of culture in America that I'm missing out on, and I feel that if I went back to live there, 10 years from now, it seems like there would be a hole in my development as an American, as an American that I wouldn't feel like I quite fit in for some reason.
Mm.
It's like one of us growing up not knowing who Fred Flintstone was,
How dare you say that? The Jetsons.
In the Jetsons, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
How about you, Annette?
But yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I feel like I'm missing out on, maybe pop culture stuff.
Hmm.
I don't think that pop culture is important, but it seems that it's very important to people who are still immersed in it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not, it makes you a bit more of an outsider.
Yeah, I have the same feeling too, but I find that kind of how would you say? Because once you're in front of a camera, it's not real. I don't care how much reality they want to call it. It's not.
Mm-mm.
But we'll say that for cost of time. We'll say that for another topic, another show, I should say. And Inez, how about you? What do you miss back home?
Well, do you know, it's I try to get back to the States at least once a year, but I can remember like the first time going back and visiting with my girlfriends, that I'd been friends with, so I hadn't seen them for a while. We all met up at a restaurant. We had a meal. One of them had gotten married and had a baby by that point, and we had a wonderful afternoon. It was fantastic, and I can remember getting in the car, and I cried the whole way back to my house. And I can remember my husband being like, "Why are you crying? Aren't you glad you saw them?" And I was, but I just remember that moment because it was it really made it aware for me that I made the choice. I chose to live abroad, because I felt like it was great to see them. I'm still friends with them, but they were still growing and going through life, and they were, they're still friends. They see each other all the time. And I can just remember feeling that just a bit like, what am I missing out on? And thinking have I made the right choice? But yeah, at that moment, then I was just like, okay, well, this is just life. This is what happens, and the best I can do is stay in touch with with them all, which I still do. But I do remember that moment just being kind of I guess just like an aha moment for me, just kind of be like, okay, wow, this is different. Because I guess and that was the first year that I had come back, and you kind of expect everything to be the same. And we do usually pick up where we left off, but there is that gap there because I'm not there. And the same with family, and I miss out on things during the year. But I've grown used to that, and we stay in touch, again through social media. Helps out. So.
Wow, thanks a lot, guys. I really appreciate you guys. Hold on, I want to talk to you in the after show, but I really appreciate all you guys taking this time out of your day to join me here. And I hope that we get together again and we talk more about expat living, because there's a lot of things we can talk about. But we have this thing called life that we have to do. But I really, really, really appreciate you guys joining me this hour. Actually, it's about an hour and a half, but I really, really appreciate it. And before we say goodbye, a real quick one, everybody, and I'm going to throw this to Paul. Guys, I asked this in my podcast. What advice would you give to those who are thinking about becoming expats, or those who are already expats who are, maybe having a little difficulty in adjusting to their overseas life? What advice would you give to people who are in that mindset? And what advice? That's about it. Paul?
Well, I think that one of the most important things that you have to do as an expat is to keep yourself active, keep your mind active. Don't allow yourself to wallow in, I don't want to say self-pity, but wallow in your self-absorption that you're outside and you're different and you're not home and everything's bad. Everybody needs a hobby. And if you, I guess collecting stamps is on the way out with email. But one of the best hobbies is learning a new language. And so if you're in a place where the locals speak a language different from you, take some time to learn the language. Pick up children's books. Do everything that you can to learn the local language. And when you do that, that's going to make the locals embrace you a lot more quickly. It's incredible what how far a few words of Chinese can get you in Taiwan. So we've come into the world, and I think we gradually need to become a little bit more like the people around us. So Inez, get some flashcards.
Okay, John.
Oh, James, you probably know the answer to this already, huh? I have a strong feeling that the best tool that we have is our humility. Paul touches on it in as much as being able to humble yourself. So no matter what your background, no matter which country you come from, humbling yourself and putting yourself in a position where you really actively listen to the people around you, and you understand, or you build an understanding of the place that you are currently, or you have chosen to permanently to be your home, and to not have the conqueror mindset, but come as a curious explorer, whether that be the language, understanding that the customs and the habits that we have in one country can even be offensive to others in another country, and just to be humble. I think that would be my advice. It goes a long way, and as Paul says, with the language, it wins you friends, because you come with a curious nature and some humility. It'll take you a long way.
Oh, thanks a lot. Inez?
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you're having a hard time adjusting to life overseas, is to kind of maybe get involved. Find what groups are in your area. There's so many groups on Facebook now that can offer support. Where you live, there's get involved there, and also to remain curious. Learn about the country that you live in, without judgment, just kind of taking it all in and trying to just become more familiar with it,
Yeah, that's true. Or you can drop by our Facebook group. That's Expats Roundtable, and we can share ideas there. I'm sure we can help each other a lot. So, we're crushed for time. I really appreciate everyone's attention to this little conversation. So I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. Don't go, but don't leave, okay?
Yeah.
So for Expat Roundtable, I'm James Thomas. Goodbye. See you later, Paul.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
Bye, John.
Bye.
Ka kite no.
Yeah, if you have any questions, please drop by our Facebook group. That's the Expats Roundtable, and join us. Join the conversation. Take care. Everybody say goodbye in their local language. Zaijian.
Ka kite no.
Again.
Cheers.